Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good. Recently I talked about how they were considering making this entire island I live on 20 miles an hour. The speed limits here at the moment are 30s and 40s. When I was a kid, it was mostly a scattering of 30s, lots of 40s. This used to be a 40, it's now a 30. And there's other sections of the island that used to be 40s and now 30s, and a road that used to be a national speed limit which has now become another 40. So they're basically bringing down the speeds as they have done across the country, but they're now talking about locally, thinking about making everything here 20 miles an hour. As I started doing a bit of research, it turns out they've done this in places in Wales, and if you search the internet at the moment for 20 mile an hour limits, you'll get loads of, little articles from local news outlets talking about how their roads have been reduced to 20 and whether people agree or disagree or. Now I've been pondering about this. I have no problems about them putting a 20 mile an hour zone in outside a school or something like that. That makes perfect sense. I don't even mind if that's kept in place even when the school is closed, because it's just going to be a short section past a school. And that's the thing, these 20 mile an hour limits, to me, I think it's perfectly reasonable in certain locations, but the argument that's being made here, or by a lot of people, is this life-saving, or is this cash grabbing? Is it reducing injuries or increasing cash? Because they're implementing fines of £130 if you are found to be doing over 20 miles an hour in a 20 mile an hour zone. The two arguments put forward that I've seen is that it reduces emissions and it reduces injuries in crashes. So if we look at let's look at the injury side first. Now I did some quick calculations before I left, just to put this into perspective. A 1.5 tonne car, or that is 1500 kilo car, travelling at 30 miles an hour has the momentum of around 20,000 kilos, 20 tonnes. So if you hit someone with a car at 30, they are feeling the effects of 20 tonnes. If you reduce that down to 20 miles an hour, you're reducing that down to 13,000 kilos or 13 tonnes. So that is a 33.333 recurring reduction in the amount of momentum a car will have in a crash, and thus their idea behind that is that it will reduce injuries, which I believe it does. So you can't argue with that. That's physics. That is the difference it makes. It's at a 33% less impactful. Now, interestingly enough, it's also 33% slower. But you've got to start thinking, well, if they then made it 10 miles an hour, it would be 66% less damaging to the person they hit. If you reduced it by 30 miles an hour, you've just reduced the momentum of that car down to 0. You don't even have the initial 1.5 tonnes because it's not moving, unless the person crashes into it, and then, well, that's different. Now, obviously, I'm taking the mick a bit here, but you do have to start wondering, where will this end? It's 20 miles an hour is so slow to get anywhere. Now, they've said that it will only have a 5% impact in time on a 5-mile journey, taking into account the fact that you obviously speed up, slow down, etc., etc. However, if it is a 1-hour journey between a 30 mile an hour road and a 20 mile an hour road, or if you cumulatively add together the times that you would have been doing 30, you've now increased the time of travel by 33%. Example, letting someone out. If they go, they don't go. Oh, fuck. Just a pure example of so incredibly unattentive that you just can't react. Thankfully, I had plenty of space behind me and I didn't slow the car up behind me at all. I recently have a video talking about don't stop for people on side roads, but I also didn't trust that driver. As it turns out, he was as dozy as it appears. So the argument of it being less damaging to people is very valid. The argument of it, not adding that much time to your journey, I don't agree with that. I think it does add quite a bit of time to your journey because you're going 33% slower. Now, of course, there is the argument to add in here that maybe traffic flows better at 20 miles an hour and thus you actually do get places faster because people aren't overreacting and overbraking and causing, traffic. Okay, that again, that's difficult to quantify as such, but I get it. Then we can talk about the emissions side. By having an engine running at a lower speed, having less wind resistance, it will use less fuel. Okay, that's pretty obvious. How much less fuel it's going to use, I don't know, between 20 and 30, because I don't think wind resistance is as linear as you think it might be. Well, actually, no, it's not at all, is it? It's exponential, because as you double your speed, you quadruple the resistance, something along those lines. Somewhere in my brain's telling me that's the right sort of ratio. Oh yeah, this bit, by the way, this is a 40. All those other bits that were 30s, yeah, this is a 40. Makes so much sense, doesn't it? You know, there's a corner in it, there's lots of driveways. Kids sometimes use routes through here. Where's the logic in this being a 40? I mean, I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm saying other places should be 40s rather than them being 30s. I mean, I do have my personal sort of thoughts here on this, is that if people can't control a car at 30, they shouldn't be driving. The amount of people that you see, you know, unnecessarily braking for corners, not understanding the width of their vehicle, being unattentive. I mean, this isn't even getting into the things like, you know, pulling out on people or using your phone while driving, things like that. So because I work with facts and reality, I agree with them that the 20-mile-an-hour limits do help in the areas they're applied. But I believe that those areas should be very specifically selected and only be short areas near schools, particularly busy junctions and things like that. But as soon as it opens up like this road shouldn't be a 30. You saw the last road, that's a 40. Why isn't this also a 40? That makes no sense, and that's where people are going to start getting mad, especially if you put cameras in to fine people 130 quid each time that they go a few miles an hour over the 20-mile-an-hour limit. Of course, you have lots of people who are not going to know it's a 20-mile-an-hour limit to start with, and then they're going to get stung for it. I mean, there'll probably be an amount of leniency to begin with. They say that they do that to be fair. I don't know. So we can say, yes, it is safer. But is it at the same time giving them the opportunity to make lots of money through fines by making the roads so restrictive? It's possible you could consider that. I mean, the placement of speed cameras to me has never felt like it made sense in the sense of safety. It always felt like it was trying to catch people going from like a 60 to a 30. If it was straight into a village where there's people, you know, kids and stuff playing, I get it. But the amount of times you see it a mile from the village, you know, the idea that speed cameras are only put in accident black spots doesn't seem to ring true. It seems to ring more true if you look at the perspective of how much money they can make. Now, everything I've talked about up to now is pretty universal between bikes and cars. It actually doesn't make a difference because, you know, it's such low speed. Now, this leads into a video. Go. So, for everything we've seen so far, yes, it would be considered a money-making project, but it equally will help save lives. So, the government seems to genuinely want to reduce injuries to people, and that's fair enough. And that's why I start to wonder if that's truly why the government seems to not like motorcycles. Bikers on average get more hurt per crash, and if you get more hurt and seriously hurt, well then the NHS is going to have to look after you. It seems like what the government actually wants to do is reduce the risk to everyone's injuries to a point that they won't have to visit the NHS and use it and cost money, which could, in time, save people lots of money. I mean, you could even make the argument that if you make a car only do 20 miles an hour, well, people can cycle at that speed, so why pay for a car? And if people did that, well, then there'd be less congestion and people would be more healthy, there'd be less obesity, and less people would be using the NHS again. So, is it a sort of social manipulation attempt to try and make people more healthy and reduce the risks to them so that, you know, they don't cost the NHS money? What are you doing? No. So I don't really have a bias for or against the 20-mile-an-hour limits, only the placement of them. Because I really do feel like they'll be put in the wrong places, like that person doesn't know how to indicate, or that person, or know how to stop on a yield line. See, this is more the problem. This is what's going to cause more injury to people. The fact that nowadays, post-COVID, people's driving abilities and adherence to the laws is just ridiculous. And of course people will say, well, you're a biker, you're all about speed. I'm not. I love riding bikes, and yes, when I'm on a national speed limit country road at the right time and place, I will use a bit more speed than what the signs say I should, but I don't apply that into other places where it causes myself risks. Riding around this sort of area here is where I'm most likely going to have a crash. In fact, riding in this sort of area is exactly how I've had crashes. Not by my fault, because people have driven into me. And because I still have lasting damage from that, I appreciate how I don't want to crash and being a little bit more patient, hanging back a little bit, you know, just dealing with the road and understanding that you aren't, the centre of the universe, and the person in the other car doesn't give two craps about you. You know, it's very much like people in this world go around acting and treating everyone else like they're pieces of crap on their shoe, while expecting everyone else to treat them like they're a fragile biscuit. A fragile, overdunked biscuit which is just about to descend into your cup of tea and ruin it. Now, this road, for instance, does go between two places, two towns on the island. However, as you can see, because of the traffic on it, we can't do 30 anyway if we wanted to. But if they turned this into a 20, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Lots of kids walk down here. And the point is, the added time of the journey for this one road is very marginal. You know, it's not a huge difference at all. But when it comes to long swathes of road, when it makes to long interconnecting roads and they just want to blanket turn those 30s into 20s, is when it starts becoming a bit of an issue for me. It's like, that's just getting a little bit ridiculous. I mean, to be fair, what we're talking about here is travelling at 20. I'm going to travel at 20. It's actually going to be quite sensible at the moment, because this car park has got a road in it. Someone said thank you. That's actually quite rare. Right, in this scenario, 20 miles an hour makes complete sense, because a kid could come darting out there, someone could be behind there, Mr. Postman might run over, you know, it makes sense. But it wouldn't make sense to make people do this speed on that road, interconnecting big places, and it's quite clearly a main road. But as I've said, that big main road is indeed a 30 and not even a 40. So, apart from the section up there where it's very twisty and goes past houses. Makes sense, right? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't hold back. Why not? Remember, this is just my opinion, and my opinion is no more important than your opinion. Although facts do change whether someone's opinion is valid or not. If an opinion is provably wrong, then it's unfortunately no longer true, and it's just a lie to yourself. Huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video too, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.